And so yet another addition into the hidden history of the African American fighting man. This is something I didn't know until now, actually. I didn't know that Representative Charlie Rangel, the congressman from Harlem, New York, 83 years old, I had no idea that he was a Purple Heart and Bronze Star veteran. He is. And I want you to know, folks, like many individuals like him during the Korean conflict and even World War I, World War II, he's very silent about it. Don't brag about it. He received the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart for his valor after leading 40 of his fellow soldiers to safety at Kanurai. It was in South Korea. You see, Charlie, along with many others, back in the late 1950s, joined General Douglas MacArthur in what he called, when he launched his Home by Christmas offensive. Well, they weren't home by Christmas, I can tell you that. Just ask Charlie Rangel. The goal was to evict Chinese forces north of Korea there. They were right along the Korean border, Korean-Chinese border. Rangel, as a private, was called Sarge because he always took charge. He took charge that day. They were overrun by the Chinese, and he found himself lying in a ditch, wounded. That's why he got a Bronze Star. Well, he was going to lay there for a while, primarily because they were surrounded by Chinese. And then all of a sudden, he heard the real sergeant say, "They're bringing out the dogs." And he said to himself, well, as he wrote in his book, I never had a bad day, or something. Where is his book? His book is, I like to get this. I've not read it. I never had a bad day. That's it. He said this in his book. He said, while he laid there in the ditch, at the height of my prayers, Jesus said, "If you want help, you better get the hell out of that ditch." And so he did get up. He got up, he ran. And by doing so, the men who followed him, and the rest is history. He received the Purple Heart, Bronze Star, and ultimately, after Adam Clayton Powell demise, he became the congressman from Harlem, New York, and he's still there. All right, let me get to this, folks, because I don't want to be misinterpreted. Many of you have been responding to me, and I appreciate that. I'm very, very candid. I don't say what I think you want to hear, and I express basically my opinions, and all of those opinions is based upon what it was like for me growing up. I never forget that. You see, before I turned 9 years old, I had seen the remains of at least 3 burned out buildings. At least 3. Actually, it's more like 5, but I'm talking about buildings that still had the ash and the smolder. Now that doesn't, I'm not saying that for any empathy or sympathy. I'm saying it because that was the environment. I grew up in an environment where racial conflict was very, very prevalent in Biloxi, Mississippi, and ultimately in Gulfport, Mississippi. I'm talking about within 100 yards of where I lived. That was the smoldering remains of Dr. Gilbert R. Mason's office there at the corner of Nixon Street and Division. I mean, the next morning, there it is. And I think I shared the story where I was learning to ride my bicycle and I never learned how to put on brakes until it was too late. And that's how I learned about his office. I mean, I stuck my little pinky finger, actually my index finger, into the bullet hole in Mr. McDaniel's funeral home's door. And then, of course, there was Gulfport and Mr. Joe Austin. All of these World War II veterans, with the exception of Dr. Gilbert R. Mason. And then there was Mr. Austin, who was an officer, actually at the corner of Teagarden Road in Victory, where his printing press was bombed twice. And my dad and I were going over building his house there. It was bombed. And of course, needless to say, all the men, all the veterans in the area went to his aid. And then upon moving there, it was bombed again, firebombed. And the countless number of churches that were suspiciously burned, from First Missionary Baptist to in Gulfport, to Little Rock, and several others. And there were those who said, well, it was a fire. It was a heater. That's what many of the older individuals would say in public. But when they were sitting at the kitchen table, they said quite differently. So I'm sharing all that to share. That's my background. It's my background. So when I express things in an effort to get some kind of resolution to whatever it is that you're going through, it is based upon my experiences, not based upon what I was taught. My daddy always told me that experience is lived, it's not taught. So with all that said, there were some things I learned about how strong these people were, these people who were my senior there. Those folks who survived all that onslaught. And that was this. One of the basic things I learned was that no one's going to save you. You got to save yourself. You can't throw yourself as an African American on the mercy of the court. You can't cry. You can't plead. And you certainly can't take no knee. Not one of those folks took a knee. That is not doing something. Now, I understand that there are those who feel that getting someone told is getting something done. Well, you could feel that way. However, I must tell you that the rest of the world is going to forget whatever you told them. Getting someone told is not getting something done. Getting something done is getting something done. Each one of those men, each one of those people, from Mr. Galloway to Knox Walker to Miss Sarah Dunn, Miss Grace Lombard, every one of the people I'm mentioning, most of these people ended up on the Sovereignty Commission, the list. The Sovereignty Commission files for the great state of Mississippi. That was the secret file on, I guess you'd call them now, they would have been considered as black extremists. My producer, Emeritus, Judy Barkham, her mother on that list. My father on that list. Now, they didn't cry about it. They weren't begging America to do anything. What they did was they figured out a way to challenge it and be successful. In most cases, it was through the courts. As we speak right now, I think it's still into effect. Dr. Gilbert R. Mason's filed desegregation plan as derived against Nichols High. The Biloxi school system. I don't know if it's been abandoned or not yet, but it lasted forever. They were working under the plan that was filed. Well, in other words, there was a cause and then there's effect. So when I see young people protest, or the NFL protest, and they say things like, America did blah, blah, blah. For those of us who were around back then, we just kind of go, huh? What? America? I'm an American. I didn't do anything. And what actually are we doing here? The cavalry's not coming. When I see someone react and as if somehow or another someone's going to go, oh yeah, that was bad, man, that's hard. Oh, that's crazy. I'm sorry they did that to you. Or when I see someone think that somehow or another by putting it in the news or in the newspaper or even on this show that something's going to happen. Oh, see, I brought it to Rip's attention and we put it all over the air and Rip talked about it. And then what? if there's no follow through, if you're only speaking truth to power but not forcing power to submit, and trust me on this, you're wasting your breath. You have got to force it. I think Frederick Douglass said it well, and I'm paraphrasing. Power concedes nothing. It never did, never has, never will. Actually, I think I might be able to find it over here. Let's see if I can get the whole thing here. Bear with me here, folks. You're going to get to see me walk around in my library. I'm holding the microphone here. I know my director and producer over there looking at me and going, what are you doing? Because I've got my little book that I keep my little jewels. My little jewels of sayings that I have so much on this noggin I can't remember all of it. That wasn't so bad, now was it? I did it. And because I want to get this straight, what one Frederick Douglass said that I think is very significant, and that I think many people have either not read or not remembered, or choose not to consider when it comes down to dealing with tyranny. Let's see if I'll find it here. Here it is, right here. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation, or men who want crops without plowing in a field. No, that's not it. All right, now I have to find it here, folks. I'm sorry about that. But here's my point. My point is that, you know, there is this concept, it seems, that just by merely protesting, something is done. And it isn't. It takes a lot more than that. It takes actually the effort of bringing it to the forefront, and then showing what will happen if your demands are not met. If not this, then that. There has to be some kind of ultimatum, or else power or tyranny or the tyrants will not submit. They will not acquiesce to what it is you want. So I'll get that later. I will. I know it's here. I have it marked and I'm looking all over it. So I don't cry about it, right? I don't. So now I'm going to give you an idea. Roger Goodell has come forward to basically suggest, well, no, just it says it in our handbook there, that all players should, quote, should stand, hold their helmet in their left hand, and stop conversation when the national anthem is being played. And he just basically sent a memo. I have it here. The full memo. We live in a country that can feel very divided. Sports, and especially the NFL, brings people together and lets them sit side by side and set aside those divisions. Well, I'm not going to go through it in detail because he stopped short of saying that there's going to be some force. There's some suggestion that there will be. My question for you is, so what should the players do now? Your guess is as good as mine. Go to It Is a New Day Facebook page and you can weigh in. Let me tell you what I think. What I think is effective. I think it's effective. Has anyone heard from Kaepernick, by the way? I mean, I see a tweet or two here, but not much is said. Well, at the very least, I would hope, I really would hope that you would, now that you have rose to the occasion by taking a knee, you can't stop there, brother. Now you've got to give direction. You've got our attention. You've got the attention of a lot of people, and now they're looking for you to do what you did then, and that is express some leadership and follow through. Can't come off the field now, my man. I mean, you're just starting the first quarter. First quarter, brother. Now is the time for you to now plan the play. And you've got a team, obviously, behind you. Thanks to the antics, the political antics of Donald John the Moron. I like that. Donald John the Moron. All right. So now all you've got to do, quarterback, is come up with the play. Got some good split in. And there's no doubt you got some excellent linemen. I mean, big dogs. You've got the attention. Call the play. Here's the one I think you should call. I think, given the fact that it is not America that's shooting down all of our children, shooting down unarmed African American men, it's not America. It's some specifics here, some wayward individuals. In some cases, bigoted individuals. More than likely, I don't know that most of them are just scared, plain old scared, and doesn't understand the concept that their first order of business is do no harm, just like in the case of doctors or anyone else who considers themselves a hero. They go above themselves. They put themselves in harm's way to save life, not to just take it, not to say, look, I want to go home to my kids, and I don't know whether the guy's got a knife or not, so I'm just going to kill him. It's not a very honorable position, and we have led some law enforcement to believe that that's the honorable position. Well, they want to go home to their kids. Well, we all want to go home to our kids. And if I don't have any kids, I want to go home. I want to go home especially when the kids are not there, to be quite frank. That's a foregone conclusion. He's not the only one that wants to go home to his kid. The guy on the bicycle who had his light out wanted to go home. Everybody. Now, with that said, then you've got to do what you've got to do to preserve life rather than take it. So here it is. I think that the football players should have some solidarity, and they should consolidate some funds, create a fund. What is the fund? It is the government snitching fund. What does it do? I'll tell you what it does. It offers a reward. $5, $10, $15, $20, even $30,000 for anyone who would provide information leading to the arrest and conviction of any official, law enforcement, or any official who works for the government who unjustifiably kills and or abuses a citizen. Just as you offer an award for anyone leading to information for the arrest and conviction of a thief or a criminal or a murderer, then you do the same thing here. There are law enforcement officers, and there are clerks. There are dispatchers who know what I'm saying. They know that something wasn't right. So now, you guys who are making the big bucks on NFL, put together this fund. Actually, it can be done locally. I would certainly contribute to it. There's no doubt about that. Look, folks, what is the guy who just feloniously arrested a nurse has just been fired? Now, it wasn't a crime, but what I'm saying is you do have this element. I don't care if, even with physicians, you've got an element of individuals who don't do their job very well. And in some cases have an agenda. What I'm saying here is that what we've got to do is get law enforcement, get police to police to police. You got me? I think it would be very, very effective. Colin Kaepernick, I think that if by chance you lead the way by making that contribution, it's one thing to be, to offer your philanthropy. We all do. But now it's about getting something done. If you want to stop individuals, cops, who shouldn't be on the force anyway, who are acting like criminals, then what you've got to do is provide a reward. Because what is happening is there's this blue code of silence here that exists. And a lot of times it exists out of fear for some cases. In other cases, it's because they're those who are fearful of cops, but fearful of losing their jobs. I think it could be very effective. I think you should try it. Point is, though, Ro, it's time for Colin to call a play. What is the next move? I just offered a suggestion. We could call that it wouldn't be a Hail Mary. What would you call that? I wouldn't say it's a quarterback sneak. Quarterback sneak, I think, would be when Colin says he's gonna give himself up. He's gonna show up at a place. Yeah. Unannounced. That's correct. There you go. Very good. That's quarterback sneak. I like that. See, you can't hear Roe over there, but he's putting this in my ear. It's very good. I think that could be very effective. But look, folks, I don't want to get sidetracked. The key here for me, though, is that it's got to get beyond the words. There's got to be words or deeds, or words or blows or both. Oh, I found it right there, sitting right up under my hand. Frederick Douglass, 1857. Power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong that will be imposed upon them. And these will continue till they are resisted with either words or blows or with both. We've had the words. Get up off your knees now, bro. Gotta get up out of that ditch. And Frederick Douglass continues, the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. Mike Dickens say it hasn't been an oppression since in 100 years. You believe that? He says here, no, it's been 100 years. Of course, he came back and gave some explanations for that. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to let you know, there's always going to be some oppression if you allow it. And I think in many instances, that what our schools have been teaching young people is that, I guess after the Voting Rights Act of 1965, or maybe after Martin Luther King was killed, or maybe after President Barack Obama, the African American, was elected, that all is well. All is well, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to, when it comes to institutional racism. I mean, by laws, many of the laws that were discriminatory on the surface are gone. Really. Thanks to the Supreme Court, by the way, not thanks to legislation in those parts. However, that doesn't mean you don't get rid of, that all of the bigots, all of those who would want to discriminate are gone. You're going to hear some of those as we go forward. You're going to hear on this show. You're also going to hear from some Klansmen. You're going to hear you're going to hear from Common. And also there's a kickboxer who was just kicked out of the gym primarily because he didn't stand up. Because you see, again, Colin, you've left us without a play. What is the next move? You take a knee, then what? Where do we go from here? I can tell you, I'm not taking no knee. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to boycott the NFL. No. I am going to stand. I am going to put my cap on over my heart. Has nothing whatsoever to do, ladies and gentlemen, with my delusion that somehow or another we are a unified people. We're not. It has nothing whatsoever to do with some warm and fuzzy feeling that I get about some GI in a foreign place in a foreign war. No, I don't get that. My dad was that. I stand up because I live here. I'm going to make here what it's got to be. The sacrifices that's been made here, too great. I ain't blaming my country for something some ignorant bigot does. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take it out on the bigot. I can tell you that. Sometimes there are those who just don't know who their enemy is. And then in an effort to, because you're afraid, I'm going to say this. I know I'm getting short on time here. You know what I have heard? I think Nikki Giovanni said this. I was interviewing him one day. And she she did a poem. She said the only anger that an African-American male shows is toward those he loves. And I took issue with that, and we debated it. But it also brought to mind something else. What I found, be it in the 60s, 70s, and especially now, what I have found here is that the greatest fear that most African-Americans men have is of themselves, and the fact that they can go off and tear up everything. I believe that. And there are men who end up having diabetes, heart disease, and everything because there is this they're trying to keep in the stable that lightly reign voracious beast inside of them. You don't want to get me mad. I saw that in my father. The man with, having to submit to an environment that was discriminatory, going back to the back of the bus and him turning around and saying, look, I don't have to kill anybody. He bit his lip to it bled. It was like, there is this, trust me, we as African American men are afraid of what we will do if. Well, I stopped being that. I'm not afraid of me. I figured out that I just got to learn how to go off, when to go off. I'll get away with it. That I learned from my father. I learned that. Little subtle things. Little subtle things he did when law enforcement showed up on my doorstep there in the trailer and they came to arrest me for doing something stupid. And the officer decided to come inside while my mom was in her gown, and he just came, my sister answered the door, opened the door, officer came inside, and the first thing my daddy said, you better get up out of here. And while I was rustling up, putting on my pants because I knew they were coming, I saw how he handled that. Handled it very, very firm, very, very earnestly. Didn't shout. Said, officer, it would be wise for you to wait outside. My wife is loosely clothed, and I didn't invite you in. The officer understood. So, it's going to be an interesting morning. We've got a lot in store. I've got all of the information right here in front of me. I mean, in total. Eminem did a little piece there on BET, I understand. You might hear some excerpts from that regarding our president. And then here you have a senior senator suggesting that Donald John, the moron, could actually get us to World War III. I think you heard that here somewhere. You did. And never once think that can happen. And what kind of idiot goes in and puts THC in candy? Well, I guess it's for adults. What? It's Halloween and now the gummy bears and the THC? Really? Yeah. Let me tell you something, folks. I just, the one thing about modern day drug dealers and dope users, you guys just don't know. You don't know a thing about being clandestine. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a big word. You don't know a thing about doing it in secret. I mean, my God, can't you? Do you have to? Now he's got bright candies and all of that, doing this, and it's Halloween and kids eat candy. I mean, can't you just do anything undercover? It's as if you can't even smoke a doobie unless everybody knows you. Got to be as big as a cigar, Skokie. I mean, can't you just hide? I mean, must you always feel that somehow or another your rights are more important than anybody else, and therefore you should just do it? I mean, if you can't do your dope right, you realize you are dope. I mean, who wants to be caught? It's just dumb. I know, you're a druggie, and I got it. But I mean, there are folks who've been doing this for centuries. It goes back to Edgar Allan Poe. He wasn't caught, bro. Of course, it wasn't against the law then. But I mean, and it's just really, I mean, this is as bad to me as the razor blade in the apple now. I mean, so this guy was caught with 760 units of edible candies. THC, and now you've got the inhalers here. What is it? The vapes and all that. Come on. I mean, it just it's just I just Halloween and here, and my compliments to law enforcement. Really, my compliments to you, getting this idiot off the street. And then there's the Religious Freedom Act in Mississippi. One of the most aggressive, sweeping anti-LGBT measures in the nation is now law. Well, it is law, and it was held up by the courts, and now the courts have said, no, it's out of the courts now. House Bill number 1523 for the great state of Mississippi, which is now going to be another blemish, a big black eye. Actually, no, it's kind of a lavender eye. And I'm going to tell you, folks, it makes me feel like crap, because it's like, what, huh? Was it really necessary to do this law? What does it do exactly? Here's what it boils down to, and we'll throw this out there as well. There are basically three kinds of provisions that your governor and mine, Phil Bryant of the great state of Mississippi, is objecting to. These are the big objections. Let's see, where is it? Okay. Marriage is only between a man and a woman. Sex should only take place in such a marriage, and a person's gender is determined at birth and cannot be altered. You see the hands who all agree with that. All right, so now, you agree with that? Okay, good for you. All right. Now, here's the question. If anyone comes into your business and they are one of those, let's just say they're all of the above. They're transgendered, married, and have sex outside of marriage. Will you refuse to sell them your car? You got a car for sale. You want to sell them. You want to buy a car? Are you going to ask them, well, look, let me just see. Let me see your birth certificate here. And are you married to a man? And do you have sex out of marriage? A lot to cover, short period of time. We'll do it when we come back.